Do the eerie images you see in scary movies ever feature in your dreams? For some people, those images are part of their daily existence. Between illusions of grandeur and hallucinations, whether auditory or visual, sometimes this can be attributed to mycotoxins from mold. Psilocybin, found in what's commonly known as magic mushrooms, is notorious for its hallucinogenic effects. Produced by more than 200 species of fungi, an ingredient of the drug LSD and popularized in movies as a gateway to spiritual awakenings, is it any wonder that mold in one's environment can do the same? In fact, it's the reason old and dilapidated homes can often be accused of as being haunted. Because the mycotoxins created by mold attack the nervous system, they can even cause phantom sensations. Contrary to how it may sound, it's not all fun and games, as these can also cause organ failure, suicidal ideation, and, by consequence, even death. In my case, toxic mold was causing me MS symptoms, which I was able to reverse by moving to a new home and getting treatment. In my son's, it wasn't so easy. His father's home and his school also had toxic mold, causing him to develop Tourette's and OCD, as well as behavioral changes and cognitive impairments. Here's what can help.
One of the interesting things that I found in my research on different people's experiences is this one functional medicine doctor talked about how if you have the genes HLA-DQ2 and HLA-DQ8, if you're positive on those, that's a gluten intolerance. So what that lady was saying is that can make you more susceptible to mold. So like typically in a mold infested house, you will have some people that are reactive to the mold toxins and some people aren't. Just like if you have an allergy, some people have an allergy to nuts and some don't. They could be in the same family, same household. And people with HLA-DQ2 and 8 have hypersensitivity to the toxins. So anyway, I just wanted to read a little bit. I've highlighted kind of the most interesting things that you may not already know about this. Approximately 25% of the world's population is thought to be genetically susceptible, the HLA-DQ, to mold-related illness, which is why only 1 or 2 people living in a mold-infested home might show any symptom. So the doctor that's talking here actually says this, though. I've had some patients who have had negative genetic markers, and yet when we've done an assessment of urine and mold toxicity, they are indeed positive. And when we start the mold treatment that is beneficial for someone suffering from mold exposure, their symptoms get better. As Dr. Jennifer Armstrong, an environmental physician at the Ottawa Environmental Health Clinic in Ontario, Canada. It's not just the mold that makes you toxic. It may trigger you to become chemically sensitive. Then you can't tolerate perfumes and other things, and eventually you end up totally disabled for the rest of your life. So that's really interesting because I know a lot of people are chemically sensitive. So if you're sensitive to perfumes or different chemicals, you may want to consider getting a mold test in your house. See if maybe that's going on. Says one of the most striking and disturbing aspects of mold-related illness is the mental component. Nowadays, brain fog is a ubiquitous symptom linked to everything from high blood sugar to low blood sugar, chronic fatigue syndrome, and not drinking enough coffee in the morning. Yet one of the primary symptoms of exposure to molds is brain fog, mental confusion, and memory loss. And I'm telling you, man, I don't feel like myself. I'm sitting at work just trying to squeeze like I got a wet rag and I'm trying to squeeze whatever I can out of my brain. Brain fog, along with most other mold-related neurological symptoms, is driven by mold toxins altering the body's immune system. Psychiatrist and neurologist Dr. Mary Beth Ackerley, who practices in Tucson, Arizona, poignantly refers to inflammation-based cognitive issues as a brain on fire. Clinical studies have linked indoor mold exposure to alterations in the brain's blood flow and electrical activity, along with dysregulation of emotions and problems in concentration, memory, and balance. Yes. And I also heard one lady was talking about how you may even have like static electricity. She explained it very well. I don't know exactly how it works, but apparently like she had one client who, and I've known someone like this before, where all the electronics he deals with, like his cell phone, his watch, they all go kaput on him. And it turned out he had a mold illness, and it was causing changes in his electrical activity in his body. Crazy stuff. Pretty cool. And he had, had a lot of static, like, when he touched people and stuff. So, according to Accolade, T2 mycotoxin from Fusarium mold kills normal brain cells indiscriminately, while ochratoxin released by Aspergillus depletes the brain of dopamine, which is highly associated with mood disorders and movement disorders like Parkinson's disease. It also affects the hippocampus in the brain, which is involved with memory. Cornish cites a particularly dramatic case of mold-related mental illness involving a patient who had been diagnosed with early onset dementia. After Cornish diagnosed mold toxicity as the culprit, the woman discovered that the beach house she'd been living in for 3 years was ridden with toxic mold. In addition to dementia, she also had severe brain fog and joint pain. I had joint pain. When she sold that beach house and moved, she felt better. Today, she is back to being fully functional. Can you imagine getting dementia and then you're fully functional? Mold can even drive suicidal thoughts. I have patients who will walk into moldy places and their first sign that something is wrong is that they start thinking about suicide, says Ackley. And it's not psychological. There's a state, probably of inflammation, associated with thinking suicidal thoughts. Pretty interesting. Research has shown that persistent activation of microglia, the resident immune cells in the brain, is highly associated with neurodegeneration, such as happens with Alzheimer's. It's also associated with bipolar disorder. Several patients I've treated are bipolar, and as we're treating for mold illness, they're finding clarity of thought and a release from their symptoms that they haven't had otherwise. Research also shows, unfortunately, although parents can control a child's mold exposure in the home, they can't regulate their conditions at school. Several doctors interviewed related stories of teachers suffering from acute mold toxicity because of the classrooms they taught in. Cornish once treated a teacher who presented with diarrhea and unstable temperature. Every year he'd go back to work after the summer break, and he said he felt like he was losing his mind because he was having such difficulty concentrating. After being treated, he changed rooms and started to feel better. Testing revealed that mold was present throughout his old classroom and the one next to it. So, even if you're working in a sick building, it may just be a situation, like in most cases, I think in the house I was in, it might have been all through the house, but there was an animal that had crawled in under the bathtub and it was climbing into the wall. So it may have just been there, and that was where my bedroom was right behind. So you may just need to move out of a room while it gets treated, or in a sick building, go to a different room like this teacher did. It's impossible to cure a mold infection if you keep getting reinfected. Get your home tested if there's mold, see if it can be mitigated. If not, move out. The traditional Western approach of treating an infection with antibiotics does more harm than good in the case of mold. In fact, mold is a major natural source of antibiotics, which they produce as a defense mechanism. Antibiotics definitely aren't the answer because they are grown in the mold medium, says Barnett. Even powerful antifungals are powerless to get rid of the mycotoxins left in a person's body after the mold is gone. So basically, they've already excreted all their crap into you. So even when you get rid of the mold, the next step is detoxing your body from all that stuff. Barnett, Armstrong, and Cornish all focus on healing the digestive tract and any mitochondrial dysfunction, hormone abnormalities, parasites, and intestinal bacterial overgrowth accompanying the mold infection. Then they use natural mycotoxin binders such as activated charcoal, coconut charcoal, modified citrus pectin, zeolite, and bentonite clays, gamma-rizole, which is ozonated oil, and carbonized bamboo to pull toxins from the body. Called Gu syndrome, this is what they call it in Chinese medicine. It's a chronic inflammatory condition or superinfection involving many different pathogens, including fungi, viruses, and bacteria. Anyway, so testing. Oh, let me keep going here. The key symptoms to look for are the same: chronic digestive disorders, diarrhea and/or constipation, low energy, fatigue, brain fog, confusion, headaches, and physical as well as emotional pain. Clients often have anxiety and depression, as well as mood swings and personality changes. So, okay, the testing. So there's lots of different kinds of mold. And then the tests that you get will only, like, the cheaper the test, the less mold they test for. So you may test your house with a cheap test that you get at Home Depot for 99 bucks, and you just scratch the surface, my friend. So toxic molds to watch out for. Oh my God, this is way too much to read to you. Yeah, there's a lot of, okay, let me just read to you the names of them. So the ones to watch out for that they talk about: Aspergillus flavus, Aspergillus fumigatus, Aspergillus ochraceus, Aspergillus niger, Aspergillus versicolor, Chaetomium globosum, Cladosporium spores, Fusarium sp, Penicillium verrucosum, Stachybotrys chartarum, which is basically black mold. You probably heard that before. Wallemia, which is what we had, SEBI, and that can cause kidney damage. I mean, it's serious, y'all. Okay, so got mold. Where to look if mold is suspected? Basements, attic insulation, bathrooms, ventilation, HVAC ducting, air conditioning and swamp cooling systems, humidifier pans, behind wallpaper, within and below carpeting, and around ceiling tiles. Pay attention to your symptoms and where you experience them. These places could be making you ill. Get out of the mold for at least a week. Here you go. So there's a few tests that they're mentioning. HERTSMI, HERTSMI2. This is a mold test for the 5 most dangerous molds, costing around $150. The ERMI test, which is the one we did, it's called the Environmental Relative Moldiness Index, was developed by the U.S. the EPA, to assess the overall mold burden in a space by quantifying 36 molds and comparing their levels against a reference database. Runs about $200 to $350, yes. There's a lot of companies online that you can order those from. The thing is, you won't know how to read them, so you won't really know what you're doing. So you may want to get a functional medicine doctor anyway. Anyway, Petri dish test. So this is the stuff you can get for $10 or $80. They attract many different molds, so test results are difficult to interpret. Many toxic molds, including Stachybotrys, don't readily show up in these tests. Worth it? Not really. If you think you have a problem, get serious. Air tests. These detect the presence of spores from different species of mold in the air, usually conducted by indoor air quality professionals. The disadvantages: these tests miss mold fragments and other genetic material indicating the presence of mold. They also tend to miss Stachybotrys, which releases a heavy spore that quickly falls to the floor, and they're expensive, costing $1,000 and up. Personal testing. Testing for mold mycotoxins in you. So basically it's a urine sample. Sometimes nasal and sputum tests are done. Rarely a tissue biopsy may be required. Oh boy. So these are the tests. Let's see. The personal testing that are recommended by Dr. Richie Shoemaker. Vasoactive intestinal polypeptide, called VIP for short. Melanocyte stimulating hormone, called MSH. Transforming growth factor beta 1, otherwise known as TGF beta 1. Just thank God it's Friday. Beta 1. C4A. Other tests are Great Plains Laboratory does mycotoxin tests, chronic inflammation response system, visual contrast test. It's a free online test of contrast sensitivity.
Mold in the environment can also cause an overgrowth of fungi in the intestines, which will need to be dealt with in order to recover from illness. This and mold testing and recovery is covered in my group training sessions on each topic. I've left a link in the description of this video. You can also book a virtual one-on-one consultation with me to help you get on the road to healing. And if you want more content like this, give it a like, share with someone who will benefit, and subscribe.